Before you continue with your day, pause for a moment, because what you are about to hear has sent waves through the entire drama industry. Imagine a secret contract so powerful that it could quietly control who two actors are allowed to stand beside, who they are allowed to greet publicly, and even how often they can appear in the same room. Now imagine that contract being revealed by someone who decided the silence had lasted long enough. That is exactly what happened when Joseph Zeng stepped forward and exposed a hidden agency agreement that many insiders say was designed to keep Wang and Shen Yue separated despite years of fan anticipation for their reunion. What Joseph Zeng revealed stunned the industry and left fans asking one huge question. Were Wang and Shen Yue ever truly free to reconnect, or were invisible rules controlling every move behind the scenes? Stay with this story until the end, because the final moments of this revelation reveal something even more shocking about the pressure actors face when fame collides with powerful contracts. The night the story began did not look dramatic from the outside. A quiet industry gathering had brought together several actors, producers, and managers inside a private lounge high above the city skyline. Soft lighting reflected across polished glass tables, while conversations drifted between laughter and serious discussions about upcoming productions. Joseph Zeng had arrived earlier than most. He sat near the window watching the lights of the city stretch across the horizon while casually scrolling through his phone. Around him, several producers discussed upcoming casting decisions while assistants moved quietly through the room delivering drinks and documents. At first, nothing seemed unusual. But across the room, someone mentioned two names that instantly shifted the atmosphere. Wang and Shen Yue. The mention was subtle, yet the reaction from several industry insiders was immediate. Voices lowered slightly. Eyes exchanged quick glances. The kind of silent communication that happens when people know more than they're willing to say out loud. Joseph Zeng noticed it immediately. He leaned back in his chair, observing the change in energy around the room. For years, fans had speculated about why Wang and Shen Yue rarely appeared together despite their undeniable popularity as a pair during earlier projects. Many believed it was scheduling conflicts. Others assumed personal differences. But Joseph Zeng knew the truth was far more complicated. Earlier that afternoon, he had received a message from someone inside an agency office. Attached to that message was a document. A document that revealed something many actors quietly feared but rarely confirmed. A contract clause. Not an ordinary contract condition, but something far more restrictive. The clause outlined a set of industry rules that effectively prevented certain actors from publicly reconnecting with former co-stars if their reunion could conflict with newer promotional narratives carefully designed by management teams. Joseph Zeng had read the document 3 times before fully absorbing what it meant. The language inside the clause was precise and deliberate. It described professional boundaries that actors were expected to maintain even outside filming schedules. Public appearances, joint interviews, and even casual social interactions could be limited if they contradicted marketing strategies created by agencies. One section of the clause stood out more than anything else. It referred specifically to maintaining distance from certain previously paired actors to avoid confusion among fan communities. The names were not written directly, but the context was unmistakable. Wang and Shen Yue. Joseph Zeng closed the document slowly when he finished reading it. The quiet lounge around him suddenly felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were holding secrets the public had never seen. Across the room, a young assistant approached a producer and whispered something that caused several people to glance toward the entrance. The door opened and Wang walked in. Even in a casual jacket, he carried the presence that had made him one of the most recognizable faces in modern drama. Conversations paused for a moment as several people greeted him warmly. Not long after, another figure entered from the opposite side of the room.
Shen Yue.
For a split second, the room seemed to hold its breath. Many people in the lounge had worked in the industry long enough to understand the complicated history between the two actors. They had once shared a project that created an enormous wave of fan enthusiasm across the world. Their on-screen chemistry had become one of the most talked-about moments in modern drama culture. Yet since that time, their appearances together had become surprisingly rare. Joseph Zeng watched carefully as Wang and Shen Yue noticed each other across the room. There was no dramatic confrontation. No raised voices. Instead, there was a quiet moment of recognition. A brief smile from Shen Yue. A nod from Dylan Wang. Two professionals acknowledging each other, while an invisible wall stood between them. That invisible wall suddenly felt very real to Joseph Zeng. He reached into his pocket and looked again at the document stored on his phone. The clause was clear. Professional distance must be maintained if public association threatens the promotional positioning of contracted talent. In simpler terms, it meant one thing: stay apart. Joseph Zeng felt something shift inside him at that moment. For years, he had watched actors navigate complicated expectations created by agencies' managers and marketing teams. He understood that the entertainment industry relied heavily on image control. But something about this particular clause felt different. It was not simply about marketing. It was about control. Later that evening, a small group gathered near the balcony to escape the crowded lounge. The cool night air carried distant city sounds while conversations drifted between stories of filming experiences and upcoming projects. Dylan Wang stood quietly near the railing, looking out at the skyline. Shen Yue stood several steps away, speaking with another actress. Joseph Zeng joined them a moment later. For a while, nobody mentioned the tension in the room. They spoke about work schedules, travel plans, and the exhausting pace of filming life. But eventually the topic that everyone had been avoiding surfaced. Why do people think we cannot even stand in the same room anymore? It was Shen Yue who said it. Her voice was calm, yet the question carried a weight that surprised everyone standing there. Joseph Zeng exchanged a glance with Dylan Wang before responding. Sometimes the reason is not what people think. Shen Yue tilted her head, slightly curious about his tone. What do you mean? Joseph Zeng paused for a moment before pulling out his phone. Because sometimes the reason is written in contracts nobody outside the industry ever sees. He showed them the document. Dylan Wang read it silently. Shen Yue leaned closer, studying the lines carefully. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The quiet night air around them felt almost unreal as the truth settled into the moment. So, this is what they are afraid of, Shen Yue said softly. Not us. The reaction. Joseph Zeng nodded. The industry fears losing control of the narrative. Dylan Wang placed the phone back in Joseph Zeng's hand. And now you have it. Joseph Zeng looked toward the city lights stretching endlessly beyond the balcony. Yes. And now people might finally understand. Within days, whispers about the clause began spreading through online fan communities. Screenshots of partial documents appeared on forums. Discussions exploded across social media as fans tried to interpret what the revelation meant for Dylan Wang and Shen Yue. Some fans were shocked. Others felt vindicated after years of speculation. But the biggest realization came slowly as people absorbed the deeper meaning of the situation. Sometimes the distance between celebrities is not created by personal conflict. Sometimes it is written quietly into contracts. Back on the balcony, that night, Shen Yue looked toward Dylan Wang with a thoughtful expression. Maybe one day these rules will not matter anymore. Dylan Wang smiled slightly. Maybe. Joseph Zeng watched the two of them standing beneath the glow of city lights and realized something important. Contracts may control appearances, but they cannot control truth forever. And if this revelation surprised you, then stay close, because the next chapter of this story may reveal what happened when the industry realized its hidden rules were no longer completely hidden.